Welcome to the Jess Larsen Show on innovation and leadership. Today on the show, we've got Tony Aguilar. Tony, thanks for doing this.
Jess, thanks so much for having me.
I'm really interested in the fintech space in general. A lot of people know I started my real career. I did some crappy sales jobs, but my real career, I feel like, started when I got on a merger and acquisition team for Citigroup. I guess like 18 years ago, and it's just fascinating to me how many aspects of the industry are changing, and so I'm excited to have people like you on the show to kind of like teach me stuff I don't know. So let's start with what Chipper is and how many millions of dollars of student loans you're helping, and like, let me start with this. Isn't it like over like 130,000 customers already you guys are helping?
Given just the changes and that student loans are coming back into repayment and all the noise around student loan forgiveness, we're over 150,000 users
150.
now and growing fast. It's been real fun.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's go back. What's Chipper, and give us some of the stats?
Yeah, so Chipper is a mission-driven technology company that helps student loan borrowers navigate this confusing world of student loans and ultimately helps them get out of debt faster so they can reach upward mobility. At Chipper, we are working with over 150,000 users. We have over $3 billion in student loans on our platform. What we do is we provide a free app that helps borrowers analyze their options, manage their debt, and ultimately pay back their student loans. And really the way we do it is three things. The first is just provide transparency. So there's all these different repayment programs, all these forgiveness programs that exist, and most people have no idea if they qualify or not. And so a user comes in, they link their loan, answer a couple questions, and we provide them with all the different options that they specifically qualify for. The second part is we help them take action. So once they find a plan, a forgiveness program, or repayment program that they want to jump into, we handle the entire enrollment process for them. And lastly, we help them make progress every single day with two features. One is roundups, where a user links the cards they use to make purchases. And every time they make a transaction, we round it up and send the change off to their student loans. So they're chipping away every single day. And also with rewards, those same cards that they linked, they shop with certain brands that we've partnered with, and those brands will kick back 5 to 10% towards their student loan debt. And so, you don't going to feel so guilty about going to Target and maybe overspending a little too much because you're going to have a chunk of that transaction go back to your student loans.
And so let's talk about roundups for a minute. So it's like, I go get a hot chocolate at the coffee shop,
Mm-hmm.
and it rounds it up 50 cents or something. So feeling the pain, but I've got this, like, these little transactions all through my month.
Absolutely.
Just adding a little bit here and there. Is that right?
Absolutely. So you're essentially tricking yourself to chip away and pay a little bit more, right? So you're paying off and accelerating your payoff without thinking about it. And what's interesting is, on average, our users are doing $35 to $40 per month. And with the compounding effect of interest, as like adding any additional amount that you can really has a substantial impact on just the long-term payoff of how much money you can save on interest, but also how fast you can accelerate it. So that 35 or $40 doesn't seem like a lot, but for our average user, it's cutting off the repayment by 2.5 to 3 years and saving over $6,000 in interest. And so it's just a smart way of you chipping away without feeling the pain.
It is so interesting how the human brain is not built to understand interest repayment or compound interest. Like when you ask people, like you just give an average person like a guesstimate, like, hey, here's this. If you were to estimate like how much that's going to be worth with compound interest over time, it's just like in general, the estimates are so drastically lower than reality across the board. Like who thinks like 50 cents on my hot chocolate is going to turn into $6,500?
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's, a lot of people come into the app and they're like, why would I do this? Like, it's just a couple cents each day. Like, it's not going to make an impact. But then having a calculator to show, like, based off your historical transactions each month, your average, roundup amount's going to be this much. And here's how much time and money it's going to save you. And it just blows people's minds. Like, wow, it's like, can you actually make that many purchases? Or is it really, the impact of, the compounding effect of interest? And so, yeah, it's just a simple way for people to chip away their debt. And for most of our users, right, like, paying off their debts, becoming debt free, it's a journey, it's a marathon. When you have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in student loan debt, it's not something you're going to be able to wipe away in a year or two. And so every little, way that you can to help accelerate that payoff, like makes a big difference. And so, it's great to provide this type of solution for borrowers.
Yeah. So there's so much opportunity in the world of finance because there's such complicated systems that are so archaic that it's been so heavy to try and change them that there's a lot of stuff that's been around for 50 years that probably shouldn't still be around, but it's just too annoying to fix it. And now there's such drastic leverage with the digital world that we're not seeing like incremental improvements, we're seeing like huge improvements, right? What's an aspect of financial technology that when it comes to like actually being successful, instead of theoretically we should do a fintech brand that does this,
Yeah.
what's something that you think entrepreneurs underestimate?
Well, I mean, I can speak for Chipper, right? What I think makes Chipper special and unique is that, the types of people that we're helping and working with, the types of challenges that they're facing, right? We're talking about people that are drowning in student loan debt. These people are typically serviced by nonprofits or the public sector or government agency, right? And, typically like the financial sector, when it comes to student loans, where like big companies that you see are all about refinancing or lending and giving out more debt. But for us, it's like, we can actually make a profitable business here, a pretty big business here by actually helping people that are drowning in student loans. And so no longer are you, in the fintech sector, are you focused on, going down the traditional route of lending or investing or, the traditional routes that we've seen. Now, because of technology, like there's going to be innovative ways where we can actually help underrepresented population that may be struggling, but you can still, build a for-profit business, behind it. And that's really, what I think makes Chipper special, where we are for-profit, we are venture-backed. And the people that we're helping, our business continues to grow, by helping these people get out of debt faster. And, you're seeing it in all facets of the fintech industry right now. One of the companies that I really look up to is Propel, where Jimmy Chin and the team over there they made a smartphone app for the EBT for food stamps, where they've seen this population of 40 million people, food stamps every month. And traditionally they would, have to call in a number to figure out what their balance was. And so now they're able to build a profitable, business, by serving that segment and helping those people reach out remote. And so it's exciting to see that it's like, hey, in the fintech sector, we can actually help, the people struggling the most and build a pretty powerful business.
So something that's super interesting for me personally is like, being in the private investment space kind of ever since Citigroup, so often the really best investments have always been reserved for, as long as you make 200 grand a year more or have a net worth of $1 million, excluding your home, then we'll let you into the good ones.
Yep.
Yeah. And with the Jobs Act and now, equity crowdfunding no longer being illegal, things like this, it really opens up opportunities to people that were not, that were available to about 3% of Americans, now become available to 100% of Americans. And so, people like us who are looking at like, hey, for big commercial real estate funds or things that we're thinking about, like bringing high quality deals to regular people. But, we're used to kind of the archaic, like get an offering memorandum from a top law firm. So you can give them this huge PPM and they write a check. I mean, like it's big transactions. So it's not that bad when you're like waiting days to get a check and do this, right? But like, you look at somebody like a Fundrise. I think they're raising like, at least a while back, they're raising like $2 million a day off their website, right?
Is it really that high now? Like that's amazing.
Right? And this is not like waiting for checks and people hand signing documents, right? Everything's got to be digital.
Absolutely.
So advice for people like us who are like, we really want to get into the fintech sector, It feels a little bit like a black box. It can be kind of intimidating. What kind of advice do you have for newbies?
Are you speaking from like a founder aspect or anybody that's looking to invest and participate?
No. Entrepreneurs who are like, hey, I see this opportunity. I think that there's an unmet need. We should learn this skill set so that we can meet that unmet need, but fintech feels complicated.
I mean, I can say, Jess, never in my wildest dreams of growing up, going to college, did I imagine I would be, leading and founding a fintech company, a technology company, a student loan company, right? Like my whole goal was to pursue financial services because, I grew up in a very humble place and I wanted to help people where I grew up, like reach upward mobility. And me dealing with student loans myself, right? Like I had over $100,000 when I left school. And because it was a problem that I faced, and as a financial advisor, I saw that it was impacting everybody around me. I was like, there needs to be a solution here. Like the traditional products and services that exist are not built for people in this situation. And so it was really out of need, to provide a service to people struggling with student loans. And so because of that, of pursuing just wanting to solve this problem that I faced personally and I saw everybody around me dealing with, kind of led me into this fintech world. And so for founders who are thinking of, going into fintech or just going to start a company in general, it's like, what is a problem that you are facing today? Because if you're facing it, there's likely, thousands, if not millions of people, facing the same exact problem. Can you go, build a solution that is simple, easy to use, and provide that solution to them, right? And generate revenue from doing it. And so it's really not trying to come up with this novel, creative thing of what's new or innovative. It's like, go solve a problem that people have. And if the market's big enough and you can charge a decent price for it, like you have a business right there. So I think that's the perspective to kind of take if you're looking to get started.
Yeah. So I guess maybe the follow-on question there is like, for me, starting a consulting firm has like a much lower hurdle because I just get the client and I get the work and then our team goes does the work.
Yeah.
Where inventing, getting coders, inventing an entire financial technology business is has a level of complexity a lot of other businesses don't.
For sure.
So if you had advice for founders who are wading into a new level of complexity of starting a tech business and specifically with all the regulations in fintech, what kind of advice do you have? They're like, I want to do this. I'm excited about it. And I'm a little nervous about the complexity.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the exact same position a couple of years ago, right? Where coming from financial services into technology, I feel like those are on like the opposite spectrums of innovation, And so having an idea around helping people with student loans, understanding how, technology works, how to build a product, how to hire developers, how to fundraise and put a deck together, like how to do all these things are things that I've learned over the last couple of years. And, I would say two pieces of advice. One is the information is out there, right? There's so many platforms. There's so many startup accelerators. There's so many networks that you can join for free to start learning the foundation of what it takes to just get a company off the ground, right? So go to the YC, websites, tap into 500 startups. Every, regional city, like, it doesn't have to be a metropolitan place. Like I went to an incubator in Kansas City, right? There's some in South Dakota, like they're everywhere now. There's opportunities for you to, get access to the network, to the investors, to the technologists needed to go build a company. The second thing I'll say is, and it was out of necessity, right? Where I didn't know anything about, building a company, running a startup, getting started. And I kind of used that to my advantage. And so I got lucky being here in Austin where Capital Factory, which is now at the center of gravity for startups and founders, was just getting started. And so I was fortunate to get in, and it was just a network of advisors and founders and investors. And so every challenge that I had, whether it's, marketing my new product, whether it's learning how to fundraise, all that stuff, there was somebody there who had experience and was an expert at it. And so I just asked for help. I just asked for, the knowledge and, do you have 30 minutes to sit down with me, take a look at my business plan, take a look at my deck? Like, here's how I'm thinking about hiring. And the craziest thing that I learned was that people are willing to help. Like they want to help, especially if they have the experience in doing it. They want to see you succeed. And so, if you feel like you have no idea what you're doing, like I think that's most founders, like right when you're getting started. But know that the resources are out there, the people are out there to help you, become successful.
So let's take a couple of these topics you just brought up. Fundraising.
Yeah.
there's the percentage of people that go for VC funding specifically versus the percentage that get them. It's a pretty small number. Uh, when you think about what you did different, that you actually got VC funding, what do you attribute that to?
Yeah. I mean, so last year, 2021 was the biggest year for venture capital ever, right? $330 billion were invested into startups, everywhere. And less than 0.5% went to Latino founders in the US, right? So being one of those is, we're in a very, very small, subgroup. And, what I think I did different, and it's not just, because of my background, but I think what I did different to enable me to run an efficient fundraise was, one, every investor meeting that you have is a chance to learn and understand what is actually, syncing and aligning with investors, what is confusing, right? And so we went through 59 pitches before we got a yes, right? With my, through our first fundraising, 59. And after every single meeting, it was downloading and really understanding of like, okay, what questions are they asking, right? If there's a common thread of the same questions being asked in multiple conversations, like that is an opportunity for you to provide that clarity within your deck right away, right? So you want those investors to walk away with, as minimal questions as possible, right? And so every single conversation was opportunity for me to iterate my deck in the way I pitched it. And then I would say the second thing is, not giving up. It's so hard to, go through a dozen conversations, to go through 20, to go through 25 investor conversations, and you're getting flat no's across the board. Like that takes a shot to your ego. That makes you, start to believe in what you're doing. Like, am I crazy? Why am I doing this? It's a mental game. And so just, having people around you to keep talking to as you go through those, those trenches, like it's a lonely place. And so making sure you're not doing it alone, making sure you're reaching out to other founders, to talking to your team, talking to advisors, anybody that's willing to sit down and hear you vent, over and over again, I think is crucial, because, you could get to a pretty dark place very quickly with all those notes. So iterate as much as you can, find those patterns as you're going through fundraising, and just don't give up. Like, all it takes is one, right? So what's what Cuban said, and it's true. Once you get that one and that confidence and that first check that comes in, that's where momentum really starts to build. And at that point, for most startups, it accelerates and fundraising closes for that round pretty quick.
So let's talk about this. Talk about how you felt after the 25th no compared to how you felt after the 50th no.
Honestly, I would say the first 10, 15 were the hardest, because that's when you're really it's sloppy. You're trying to put pieces together, and the story's not making sense. You're getting questions asked that you didn't think of, and so your response is there. You're stuttering back. You don't know really what's going on. Those meetings just went terrible. So I think those first batch of meetings, were the hardest. As I refined my deck, as I got, cause as we went through the process, you're kind of getting people on the fence, you're getting some interest, right? And so from there, my confidence started to build, and I knew that we were getting pretty close, right? And so it was just that first batch that was, kind of, the trial and error. And so the advice I would give there is, make a list of your A, B, C, potential investors. And for those first, 5, 10, 15 conversations, make those your C investors, right? You don't want to go pitch, of your highlight investor that you really, really want in your first 2 or 3 pitches, because it's not going to go as well as you think. And so you want to make sure you have those reps in. You can really pick up your story, refine your deck, and you're going to be ready to go, by the time you start having those conversations.
That's good. So what did progress? What changed over 59 pitches? What's an example of a pattern you recognized that helped you evolve?
Yeah. So for, when you're going through a fundraise, a lot of times you're building relationships or having conversations early on with investors. And so, your first meeting, even though you're not actually, maybe pitching a deck or, trying to get, money, within those first initial conversations, investors are giving you hints of what they want to see, what kind of progress they want to see, what kind of traction they want to see, right? So what enabled us to really, because it was a longer process than expected, we were able to start building up traction up to that point, right? So we were able to really hone in on our sales strategy or acquisition strategy, or for you, whatever, whatever is the progress or milestones that you need to hit. It's like getting some insight into what those things are. So when those conversations are had and the real pitch meeting is there, and you're not just talking to an associate early on, you're now in the partner meeting, you can talk about the progress you've made, from the first conversation or from previous 3 months, right? So it's trying to show that progress is there, and that you're also like learning, right? So if they're telling you we need to go see this or see that in order to feel confident and to write a check, it's like, okay, I took that to heart. Our team is going to go focus on that and execute. There's not anything else that you can prove to an investor than to show that you can execute from any insight or feedback they provided to you.
That's great. What are a couple of examples of what those things were for you guys?
So the 59 no's before a yes was actually with my first startup. That was Student Loan Genius. And so with that company, it was actually closing deals. So Student Loan Genius was we pioneered the 401k for student loans. So I'm really trying to solve this student loan epidemic, Jess, but it hasn't gone away yet. It's only gotten bigger, right? So that first company was coming out with a new benefit that no one has ever heard about before, right? Like, what, you're going to get companies to pay down debt for employees? Like, no way. No one's ever going to do that. And for us, it's like, hey, giving money to employees for 401k and investments all the time. Why not, help them with the biggest financial burden they have today? And so for us, it was just closing deals and getting companies to buy in. And initially, it was just like LOIs. It wasn't even real deals yet. It was just, any type of traction that we could provide to show that companies are willing to provide this type of service to their employees. But that was the biggest key. It was just, showing that there's potential customers in there and they're willing to actually purchase what we're selling.
Traction, right?
Traction. That's it.
I love it. Well, let's shift gears then. When you think about, let's just take fintech. How many people are excited about the possibilities in fintech? Before the show, we were talking about Divvy and, having Alex Bean on here on the show, raising 30 million, 250 million, and then selling for 2.6 billion. Like that's a magnetic story, right?
What was that time frame, by the way?
Oh, maybe like 3.5 years.
That's amazing. That's so fast.
Something like that. I would say between interviews, like for the first interview to the last interview would be my guess. 4 years, something like that. 3 or 4 years. Yeah. And so there's a whole bunch of people that see the results others are getting, that get excited about it. And yet so many of the ambitious people trying to start fintech businesses have not grown to 150,000 users, helping them manage $3 billion worth of debt. When you think about attracting those users, what's a principle for getting new users that was effective for you?
Yeah, consumer fintech, I really think it's two things. One is really understanding what your vision is for the company. So at Chipper, our goal is to really impact the people that are hit the hardest by student debt. And so these are, teachers, public service employees who have access to these programs that have been promised to have their debt forgiven after 10 years. And, less than 2% of people who apply actually get it. But also people of color and women, they are getting hit really, really hard with student loan debt. Not only are they coming out with essentially a lot more debt, but when they get into the workforce, you're making 20% less. And of course that impacts your ability to repay, and also impacts your savings rates, for homes, for retirement, for other things. And so for us, it's like, that's the grand vision that we have, is really providing products and solutions, for that group. But early on, it's really finding the niche that's going to enable you to have that traction, right? To show that you can penetrate a market, that you can provide a solution for a certain set of users, and to really make them happy and get them to be raving fans. And then from there, it's expanding, right? To, and at that point, you have enough data and information to kind of understand what your next move, should be. So with Chipper, we launched at the beginning of 2020, Q1, before the pandemic. And so we had this grand vision of what Chipper is today. But in March 2020, student loan payments went on pause. So it's like, we're going to have this app that's going to help people chip away their student loan debt, through easy transactions and through rewards. And it's like, well, people don't have to pay their loans. They don't care about paying it off anymore, right? Um, and so for us, it was sitting down and really diving deeper into into the market, talking to users, and really understanding that, okay, this problem is so big, but there is a niche that we can still help. And we honed in on the public service loan. People were still trying to apply. They were still trying to get access to that program. And it was very difficult. And so for the last 2 years, that's really or for the first 2 years of the business, we really focused on that subset and created an incredible that helped tens of thousands of users get over 120 million in public service loan forgiveness approved. And so we're really proud of that. And so it's like, understand what your vision is, but then early on hone in on, one niche. And then from there, you'll have the data and the opportunity to expand your products and service to more people.
So I love that. You're all excited, you ramp up, and a month in, there's a global pandemic that destroys your primary market, right? Or at least their urgency, their current urgency on it. So I'm so with you. I love this idea of, take a deep breath and adapt and find out who still has a current strong need, right? My next question though is, when you think about getting the word out, okay, so we found these people, that are still trying to work on this, that this is an urgent need that they're trying to deal with. I mean, was this social media? Is this one-on-ones? Like what were some of the early tactics to get the ball rolling?
Yeah. I mean, early on, I think you have to do the things that I think Paul Graham said that don't scale. So especially for us, like the student loan problem and navigating public service loan forgiveness was so confusing, and there were so many moving pieces, and every single borrower that we faced had a different financial situation. They went to different schools, had different types of debts. They have been paying for 3 years versus 8 years, right? Like there's just so many different variables. And so to try to build a solution right from the get-go that's going to help that entire, niche of users was going to be impossible. So for us, it was one-on-ones, talking to users, and literally we were doing manual, filling out forms for people to understand exactly how it worked. And then once we understood like how a certain part of the process worked, it's like, okay, how do we go automate that with technology? And so for us, it was really understanding, the problems that people are facing, understanding what the challenges that they have, getting a better understanding of the process and how things work today. And then how can we use technology to automate that and make it as amazing as possible? So what you see in the app today, took, months and months and years of, filling out things manually, doing faxes, sending faxes to, did you know people still fax things? Like we send tens of thousands of applications via fax to the servicers, right? But, that was the way for us to actually automate this and get this forgiveness that teachers and nurses, deserve.
So let's talk about getting those teachers and nurses. Were you going on forums? Like, were you talking to nursing associations? Were you just calling a friend who knows a nurse? Like, how did you get those first ones to even be filling them out in hand?
We tried everything possible, right? So it is, exhausting your personal network. Fortunately, I have amazing friends who, I grew up with, that I went to high school and college with that became teachers. So blasting on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and getting that initial set of users and testers that gratefully they stuck through us with that, through the road bumps that we faced and the terrible process we had early on, but they helped us learn. And, for us was really, trying to find pockets of where do teachers live? Where does your network live? Where are your customers? And for us, Instagram worked really, really well. So there's teachers out there who have followings of 50, 100,000, 150,000 followers. And, we reached out to these teachers, slid into their DMs and was like, hey, we have a solution to help teachers get out of student loan debt or get access to public service loan forgiveness. Have you ever applied? Do you have loans? We'd love to help you for free. And, it was working with a couple hundred of those teachers who, we actually helped, get public service loan forgiveness. And when you help somebody get 25, 50, 75K forgiven and their loans vanish, I mean, they're going to be raving fans for you. So then they would share on their platform, and then, the users just started to come in. And so for us, thank goodness for social media today. it allowed us to, find our first subset of users. And then from there, we really started to expand.
That's awesome. Um, so as that's evolved, so that great, you've got the initial users, um, you're doing the things that don't scale, and you're starting to see patterns. What was that next level? Like, where was this pivot point where you went from like getting going to like starting to get some mass adoption into like the thousands and thousands of users? What was an aha moment, or what's something you figured out?
I mean, so for us, it was trying to do as much rapid experimentation as possible. So really trying to, one, look at the traditional, avenues of acquiring users. So from, working with affiliates, working, testing things on Facebook and Instagram ads, Google and Bing, paid search. Like we tried almost every avenue possible. And really what we started to pick up steam was paid search, which is very surprising. Typically when you're in the fintech or you're in the student loan space, it's very expensive to do any type of advertising on Google or Bing. Like a keyword for like student loans or for investing or retirement or like anything in fintech is very, very expensive, right? Cost per click. But, because we have been in the trenches with our users, because we've done so many hundreds of user interviews, we understand that the way they interact with their student loans and their student loan servicer, whenever they wanted to take action or learn something, if I need to go make a payment at Navient or Great Lakes or anywhere else, I'm going to Google and I'm typing in Navient or Great Lakes or whoever, Great Lakes are one of those exciting apps that people have on their phones that they're willing to see, right? It's like they don't want to have easy access to see how much debt they have. And so we just really understanding the way our users interacted with their student loans was typically through Google search. And so we're like, hey, maybe we could run ads around Navient or the servicers. And we found a massive gap in the market. And so for us, we're able to drive thousands of users for a really, really low, cost per click. And then from there, it was just optimizing every part of the funnel. Like, how do we make the website a little more trustworthy? How do we make the messaging more trustworthy? How do we answer questions that people have when they come to our website? And so ton of experimentation. And then once we found a little bit of traction, it's like, okay, how do we really take advantage of this?
So I'm interested, we had Perry Marshall on the show. He wrote the best-selling Google AdWords book of all time.
Oh, wow.
And he it's great. But he talks about like how it's like such a powerful tool, but if you use it without a competency, it'll just like vacuum out your bank account really quick. So when you think about the learning curve on paid search, pay-per-click, stuff like this, what are a couple of principles that you would share with people?
One is, I'm sure you have a friend who may have a little bit of experience running ads before. And so, I mean, for me, it was, being in Austin, we had access to a couple people who had some experience with AdWords. So it was really just getting a baseline of understanding from them on just how to set it up. Second is anybody on our growth team. We use Udemy, there's Coursera, there's a bunch of other platforms where you could go learn this stuff. You could pay $10, $20 and have a masterclass on Google AdWords, on Bing AdWords, whatever it is. So very cheaply, you could really get a foundation in place, on one of those platforms. Also, through the accelerators that we've been grateful to be a part of, there's blogs and articles written around kind of getting things set up. And so the first, depending on the type of business that you're running, there's so many different settings within Google AdWords, whether you're trying to generate leads or trying to get clicks or like whatever it is. So it's hard to get, advice across the board. Here's how do you go set it up. It's really go get an understanding of what are kind of the variables and levers within the platforms. And then how does that best, translate into your business? And so, go learn that stuff first. Also, I will say, crushes Google for us, which is shocking. I was like, who uses Bing? I didn't know Bing is still like a platform that people are still searching for. But what we learned is, again, working with the public sector, teachers, government employees, a lot of their devices are Microsoft devices. So teachers in their classroom typing Navient or whatever, is coming through Bing. And so we actually were like, hey, let's just test out Bing and see if it'll work. And we just saw like such a bigger, a rush of users come from that platform versus Google. Google's fantastic. It was just, a channel that we didn't expect to see people come.
Think about how much, like, what if small percentage of the population is like, oh man, I got to get some Bing pay-per-click. From a competition standpoint, it's
100%.
kind of like the Warren Buffett principle of like go where the crowds aren't, right?
Oh man, we're ranking #1 on Bing. Like that's what we're pushing for.
Okay, this is great. What's one more principle for, people who are trying to really get scale and, they wish they had 150,000 clients? What's another principle you'd share with CEOs?
It's just really, for us, the campaign, the strategies, the things that we expected to work really well, in most cases didn't. And so it was trying a bunch of different tactics that, just to see where we could get momentum. And from there, it was just building upon it. And so, I wouldn't, don't get pessimistic, if the campaigns or the roadmap or the strategy that you put in place is not working. Because I think that's the case for most startups. It's trying a lot of different things, and you're going to surprise yourself by what actually works and enables you to bring in users and customers.
That's great. Like, what are some examples of some of your experiments that you're like, I thought this was going to be awesome, then it didn't pan out?
I mean, Facebook and Instagram ads. I was like, I click on them all the time. Like, they're going to be so great for us, right? It's like, and when we actually for us, it was interesting to learn that when we launched them, we got put into a special category. Like we're a credit company because we have loans and student debts like in our campaign. And there's no other way for us to advertise what we do without using those words. But the algorithm picks them up automatically, and it's impossible for us to get out of that category. Because of that, it limits our ability to really target our users. So obviously we want people who are college educated because they have student debt and certain age groups and things like that. And you lose all of that ability. And so, when we fundraise, we're like, hey, we're going to launch, put this tranche of money in, into Instagram and Bing ad or Instagram and Facebook ads, because that's where our users are. And just didn't work out for us at all. College campuses, you would think that that's a high concentration of people with student loan debt, more than anywhere else in the world, right? And so let's run these campaigns. Let's get, some boots on the streets. Let's hire these, these teams on college campuses, hand out Red Bull and talk about student loans and get people to sign up for the app. We thought, this is going to be a great way to build our business, and because it's worked for so many other businesses, right? And for us, we just, we learned that college students just don't care about their debt until they leave school. They're focused on class and having fun and the things that matter to them then. They're not so much focused on, trying to get out of student loan debt faster. And so that was another, oh man, we thought this was going to help us scale very quickly, and it just didn't work out.
You talked about educating people on your site. So let's say you use Bing or whatever way to get them there. What are some principles about, most people have a frequently asked questions section on their website, and it's not that helpful to the business, where it sounds like you answering questions was super helpful to your business. Can you talk about, sounds like you just took it much more seriously than other folks, and you were like, there's something different about what you guys were helping with in the way you did it.
Yeah. I mean, our space too, there's so traditionally, and we've seen it over the last couple of months too, with the announcements around forgiveness and repayment, resuming, there's so many scams that have come out. And so building up trust is a huge component of what we have to provide, when somebody comes to our site. And so the first thing, again, was sitting down with potential users, and getting an understanding of, what do you need to see on our site? What information are you missing? What are some things that we could be adding to help us feel more trustworthy, right? That we're the real deal, that we're not a scam. And so it was really just getting understanding of what are those components? And also there's been fintechs, there's been other companies in whatever space that you're in who have spent millions of dollars optimizing and, doing this, right? And so it was monitoring and going to, Lemonade, going to Acorns, going to, some of these other fintechs who have built up millions of users, and seeing, what kind of components they're using on their site, and, kind of taking those and adapting them to make it fit chipper. And then we do a lot of landing page optimization. So, enabling users to come in and then have one, two, or three different variations of that site or language or messaging or images and things like that, to just, figure out what is converting people the most. And a lot of times that surprises you too by the language that you use or the images that you use. And so again, it was sitting down with users, getting that core, foundation, and then just optimizing on top of that.
Why don't you share with us the principle there? Like I'm a big Neil Patel fan. Like I pretty much hate email newsletters. I'm like constantly unsubscribing from everything. But like Neil Patel is one that I've stayed on for years because he actually has like really actionable advice in that world. What's a lesson you learned there doing landing page optimization that, wasn't obvious at first that you figured out?
Yeah. I mean, and it was surprising because it's something that like we like on our team use every single day when we are purchasing products from Amazon, or you're going to, purchase something on any sites, is you look at reviews. It's like, what's the rating here? What are people saying about this? Like that social proof has such a huge component on helping people make decisions on what they buy and how quickly they buy. And so for us, because we had this foundation of people that we've helped, either they're using a round to reward service or we've helped them get forgiveness, but it's using their words, their stories, on our site. And so for our forgiveness, pages, that had the biggest drop off because it's like, hey, this is a scam. I get these phone calls all the time. People leave voicemails. I'm getting these letters that are not from the government. Like this feels so scammy to me. It was putting the images of our users' Instagrams, pages on there, and enabling them to click on that to go see the story that they posted about us. With that one change, like we saw a massive increase in just the number of conversions of people coming to that site. And so after that, it was just like, let's put them everywhere. Obviously with their permission, but like, let's put them all over let's put them on our emails. Let's put them in the app. Let's really let our users, shine for us. And so, it's not just the words. It was just like the images and the ability for visitors to come and go to those posts to really get them over the finish line.
That's great.
Absolutely. I want a Tesla. I have to get a Tesla. Everybody's getting a Tesla. I think one thing I want to touch on is just, diving a little bit deeper into just the state of student loans. I think, with payments being paused for almost 3 years, like I can't believe it's been that long. I just wanted to share more about just the state of student loans and like where things are. I think a lot of people forgot, that they exist and like how it's impacting people. So, right now there's 46 million people, in the country drowning in 1.7 trillion with a T, $1 trillion in student loan debt. And it's growing at $230 million per day. It's in one out of 4 households. And because payments have resumed, it's really impacting people's ability to save and invest and buy homes, do all the things we're supposed to do after school. And with payments coming back again, people have forgotten these $300, $400, $500 payments that they had, right? They're coming back into their budget. Inflation is super high. Interest rates are super high. And so, there's a lot of people that are going to be struggling again, given that payments have reappeared. And so, with Chipper, we're really just trying to help people navigate and, make sure people are entering the right repayment programs and are getting access to forgiveness and repayment programs that they have no idea that they may qualify for. And so just given the times that we're in right now, it's like, I just want everybody to know there's a solution out there. Our app is completely free. And yeah, it's been incredible to just see the impact that we've had on users.
Okay. So thinking about the state of the student loan world, this might be too political for you, Sid, so feel free to pass on it. But, it is interesting to me, like you look at post 2008, how much lenders got in trouble for predatory lending, right? And to me, like I look at this idea of like, I'm interested if you agree with me or not, and you're totally fine to disagree. To me, it feels like there is some accountability that should take place on the part of the institutions. Like when you look at how fast they've raised their tuition rates versus the product of helping young people get a career. Like, it might cost triple or quadruple. Like I went to school 20 years ago before I dropped out to be an entrepreneur, right? My daughter did this is her first semester at college. And actually my wife just went back to university after 20 years, this semester as well. So it's kind of funny to have them both
That's awesome.
in it. And
That's
Like
awesome.
there are degrees right now that are literally triple the tuition from just when I was
Yeah.
going, like in triple the tuition from 2001,
Yeah.
right? And but the job they're preparing for you, the salary has only gone up 10%, but the cost has gone up 300%. And I think about like I love my daughter, she's great, but she's not sitting there thinking like she's not like I think about how the student loan gets handed out with so little education, so little context of what this is going to mean for the next 20 years of your life, right? And and it kind of gets handed out like candy. It feels like there's some aspect of like accountability that institutions who've just skyrocketed the cost, selling it to an unsuspected 18-year-old. I don't know. Do you feel like there's any accountability that institutions should be required to do? Because people say, well, hey, nobody held the gun to your kid's head to go get that degree.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yet it is a pretty unsuspecting, an unsuspecting, like they're not even allowed to buy alcohol, but they're okay to sign away 20 years of their life with no education, no responsibility on the lender's part, the institution's part, to give an accountability of like, it's going to cost you this much and you're only likely to make that much.
Absolutely. I'll say I'm a victim of that entire process, right? Like I came from a loving, caring home, but my parents, had me very young. They, I'm the first in my family graduated from high school. Getting an education wasn't an option for me. It was like, you're going to college. I don't care where you go, but you're going to college. And, fortunate enough, like I had parents who really pushed me and I ended up going out of state for school. I didn't know what that meant. Like out of state tuition versus in-state tuition. Like I just knew that if I walked into the financial aid office before every semester and I signed a piece of paper, I could go register for classes. And so that's what I did without ever having any formal training in finances or interest rates or loans or anything else in high school or even in college, right? It's like you're never taught these things if you're not taught. And so that's, why I walked away from school with over 100K in debt, because I really didn't know what I was doing. And then the support that you get after you leave school, it's not there. Like I remember reading calls from my servicers. I had 3 different servicers and I'm like, hey, I can't pay these bills. Payments are $1,500 a month. I can't afford this on my entry-level salary. And I'm calling one servicer. They're like, well, we can help you with your loans, but not these loans over here, right? So the support that you're getting from your school afterwards it's not there. It's non-existent. And so, I do feel it's somewhat of a predatory situation. I'm going to be careful, how I kind of navigate the next part of the conversation. But I do think there needs to be some responsibility taken, from the institution, because this problem of $1.7 trillion isn't caused by people just, making financial mistakes because they're 18 years old, right? It's really a supply and demand situation where the schools know that no matter what price they charge for school, right, they're going to get paid through the federal government for it. So as a student, you can, if you go to an accredited institution, no matter what your tuition bill is, you can go to the federal government Department of Education and they will give you the money to go pay that. And schools understand that. So that's why you've seen this rate of inflation for tuition at 7% when, like you said, the increase in the value that you get, with a salary coming out of school, is a small percentage of that, right? So, I do think that there needs to be regulation, on the government side on controlling how much schools can actually raise their rates to prevent people from, or prevent institutions from raising their prices, and also capping on how much people can borrow for certain programs, knowing that the expected salary for certain programs, is typically a certain, like you shouldn't be able to be pulling out hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans when, the path in that career is going to make it impossible for you to pay off that debt.
I mean, look at like food, right? No longer can you get away with stuffing just whatever you want in food and selling it in grocery stores. Like you have to list fat, sugar. Do you know what I mean? Like you have to give some transparency to the end consumer about what they're about to put in their body. There's so many things that like sound healthy, and if you actually flip around, you're like, oh, geez, so this shit belongs in the candy aisle. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah. Well,
that normally that in olden days they didn't have to do, and like, so my wife, she's the first one in 100 years in her family line. She's the first one actually in history to have gone to college, right? And like it's so different for my daughter having her parents help navigate like, oh, which school are we going to? Oh, like for now we're able to pay for it all with cash, but like what if that wasn't the case?
Absolutely.
Or things like that, right? And I look at this idea of like just the absolute lack of transparency of the conversation of like, I mean, just like literally the label on the bottle of like, okay, look, you're in a program, even if it wasn't capped, there should be like this thing of like, you're in a program where the national average income is this, and national average expenses for a family of 3 are this, and your debt payment will make this, which means you're never taking your kids to Disneyland.
Yep.
If you take this much debt and become a teacher, if you take this much debt and become a nurse, it means like your estimated annual excess income for the next 15 years is $15 a month.
Absolutely.
Like having like even just that conversation, like, are you sure you still want to do this? You know what I mean? And again, this like alternatives. I mean, how many of us got preached to go to school? Everything will be better if you go to school.
That's the thing. It's like, especially if you're coming out from a tough area, right? It's like, you want to live a better life, right? And a lot, like my parents sacrificed everything they could so that I could go get an education so I can live this American dream that, I envisioned. I didn't know it was going to put me $100K in debts and not be able to, barely survive for the first, couple years of my life and not save, not be able to buy homes, like do all those things. And so that is still the dialogue, in a lot of communities where it's like, you have to get an education in order to reach upward mobility. Right. But that's why we also have this, like student loans don't discriminate, but it is impacting, some groups a little bit harder. Where if you have to pull out student loan debts, your ability to, make a certain salary coming out of school, it just makes it more difficult for you to actually reach that American dream and reach a level of somewhat financial freedom. It may take 10, 15 years, after you leave school.
Listen, my parents were born in the 50s. If they got a college degree, that was actually less common. Do you mean there's so many applicants out there that didn't have a college degree? By the time my generation, I'm like the end of Gen X, beginning of millennials, right?
Yeah.
It was not uncommon. And like this whole narrative, get a good education so you can get a good job so you can be taken care of. Like that wasn't even true for my parents' generation. That was true for my grandparents' generation. Get a good job, they'll take care of you for life kind of thing in certain cases. It wasn't true for my parents. It's so not true for my generation. There is not a chance that is true for my daughter's generation, right? But the narrative hasn't changed. And it's like, Warren Buffett or the people that follow Warren Buffett, like Howard Marks at Oaktree or Bruce Flatt at Brookfield manages $600 billion, right? It's like a good deal is only a good deal based on the price. Do you know what I mean? Like a good stock to buy in the stock market is not just based on whether you like Tesla or not. It's based on what price you're paying for those shares compared to what it's expected to make.
Absolutely.
Right. And it does feel like basically the institutions get to say like, do you want a Tesla or not? And they don't have to have any conversation about what you're paying for the Tesla. It's like, yeah, I want a Tesla. I've been told my whole life, get a Tesla.
I have to get a Tesla.
Get a good
Everybody's
education.
getting a Tesla. Yeah. Like you have to get a Tesla. And I hope that it does start to change the narrative where, and we're starting to see it too, where, could you just go get certifications or go learn certain skills needed to go perform like a certain job? College is not for everybody, right? Not everybody should be going to college, right? And so, changing that narrative, but also, I think schools really need to like reprogram the way they operate. Like there's no reason that you should be, taking 3-4 years of elective classes that have nothing to do with the career that you're pursuing and getting at 50K, in debt, to do it. Right. And so I'm hoping that we start to see some regulation change, as much as I hate to say it, get the government involved to kind of force, that to happen, especially if these schools are getting funded by the federal government. Like that's the way they are getting paid is through taxpayer money, is through federal funds. And so if that's the case, kind of jump in and, start to make that change. But I think it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of time. And until then, Chipper's here for those of us who, who are victims, of the process.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like it is the kid's choice. It is the parent's choice to go do this. And it's not like nobody's forcing my daughter or my wife to go back to school right now.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I'm not saying that we need to make up and make people's decisions for them. However, I'm not like, I'm generally like a more like personal responsibility, take accountability for your life. Don't blame your problems on others kind of guy. At least I'd like to think I am.
Yeah.
And at the same time, shouldn't there be some accountability in what we're offering? Just like companies should have to tell us what's in the food they're selling us. Shouldn't there be some sort of accountability of like, so hold on, what are you selling me again? And how much are you charging for it? Like, isn't that like a pretty basic thing that like,
is that so much to ask for, right? It's like, even financial aid packages, like I'm sure like you saw them, like when you first go to school, like they give you a financial aid package saying, okay, here's what you need to pay. In your case, it's like, you got to pay all of it. But for a lot of people, it's like, here's what you need to pay out of pocket. Here's, what you can get in grants. Here's what you can get in loans. And here's what you can get in Parent Plus loans,
Yeah.
right? And so, right, you're seeing a ton of schools that are just defaulting on giving parents loans when that's not the case. Like they shouldn't need to like pull out loans for their kids to go to school. Like it should, they should know that that's an option that, hey, I need to pull out these loans or not, for my kid to actually go here. There's no transparency around that, like either.
I will say, my student loans turned out to be like really great return on investment for me.
What interest rates? Like 1%, 1.5%, 2%.
Yeah, but like as an art school dropout, what I did is I used my $1,500 to buy my fiance an engagement ring, and she said yes, and we just celebrated 20-year anniversary in April. So as far as I'm concerned, my $1,500 student loan was a win.
I hear those same I hear those same
investment.
stories of college students who did that and they put it in crypto, like when the boom was going on. So for some people, it has worked out really, really well. So congratulations for the few of you where it's really, really worked out.
It was worth whatever I had to pay that one off. But hey, listen, congrats on all the success. Thanks for sharing with us a little peek behind the curtain of how you guys did it. And I'm glad you're out there taking care of people that, a lot of folks haven't focused on helping.
This was fun, Jess. Thanks so much for having me on. It's great to meet you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.